Hello? Yes, that's working, thank you. If this hacks up on me, which does sound like it's probably going to, I will change hands to that thing, which might be more level. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Is that working? Yeah, that's a bit softer as well. Good, that's better. Thank you. Good evening all. Thanks very much for giving up your evening to come along and listen, participate in this project. This is our, I think this is our fourth stakeholder evening, and we're delighted that we're still keeping up good numbers. I think we've had 3 meetings before this where we've had slightly larger audiences, but this is still a very good audience for a Monday night, so thank you. And by stakeholders, I see we've got a whole range of people in here this evening. We've got some council officers at the back there. Debbie Kay, thanks very much for coming in from the City Council. I can't see anyone else, but they could well be peppered in amongst you. We've also got, I notice, a lot of fans, as usual. Some local community members, and I see at the back there some Trumpeton residents, which is very pleased that you're here with us this evening to talk about this project of ours. At the last meeting we were looking specifically at 2 sites. We're now looking at one site in particular, and a lot of what we're going to talk about this evening is going to be about that. It's not just me talking. I'll introduce the rest of our team. Some of you who you've met before, some who are new. So at the far end is Brian Plum. Brian is with the engineering firm WSP, and Brian is going to talk to you today in particular about transport. We know transport is a very important part of this project. In from Brian, Chris White from Wrenbridge, our partners in this. Chris has been at all these meetings, so if you've been here before, you'll have seen and heard Chris before. Next to Chris, coming this way, Colin Campbell. Colin is a planning consultant at Savills and has been advising us through the project and will continue to do so. A season ticket holder, I think, to see it at Cambridge United as well. So local interest. And next to me here is Richard Arnold, Richard is can I describe you as a leisure specialist at Wrenbridge? Is that fair enough? Okay, thanks. And so Richard has been helping us, and as he and colleagues are going to take us through some of the plans that we've worked up. You've seen some recent press. There's been quite a lot in the press recently since Christmas. Most recently, Jez, who's not here tonight, but has been with us recently on a fact-finding trip down to Bilbao. We've been fairly busy, and I hope tonight that you're going to see that we have been busy. We've been looking at the areas that we said we would look at, and we are beginning to make good progress into those. So on this evening, on the agenda, can you see the screen at the back there? Is that reasonably clear? Good, and you can all hear? Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to take us through the facilities and an update on our partners. We've been working a lot, not just on what this new project comprises of, but who's going to be in it. Transport. Brian is going to take us through the transport measures as they're coming forward now. Planning policy. Colin's going to talk us through planning, and with the site at Trumpeton, planning is one of the most critical issues of the project. We said, I think at the last project meeting, the last stakeholder meeting, that we would start to bring forward ideas on governance. We've got a little bit to talk about on governance, and then the next step. So that's really what we're going to talk through this evening. And of course, at the end, we'll have some questions and some lights up and some good discussion on this. So, as I said in the opening, when we were here last, we were looking at 2 sites. Just winding you back through the process, we started at 10, we took it down to 5, and then down to 2. Since that meeting back last year, we're now looking specifically at one site, and that's at Trumpeton. And the reason for that is twofold. One is we think it's the best site for this project, And the second reason is, in terms of land, we have the opportunity to deliver this site. The other landowners on the site that we were looking at up at Niab have decided that they would rather build housing on their site and not bring it forward for this. So they wanted us to cease the discussions and focus on our own site. So that suited us, and it's part of a rigorous process that we went through looking at this project. But we're very pleased to be looking at this now and focusing on it. Just a bit of backdrop. This is a slide which is taken out of the composite development slide for Cambridge and everything that's going on in Cambridge. And there is continual debate within the authorities about the housing. And this is just this slide across Cambridge. And this slide just gives a bit of context to what is going to be happening down on the southern fringe. Trumpington Meadows is part of the southern fringe. It's a site that currently has consent for 1,200 houses in on that side. It's the area marked H. But there's a further approximately 2,500 houses, which give around about 3,500, nearly 4,000 houses in this area of Cambridge. And it's now pretty well the largest expansion area in Cambridge, particularly with the Cambridge East, the Marshalls airfield coming out of effectively the housing pipeline. So a lot is going to be going on down in this area, and we think that lends itself incredibly well to these proposals. Not least because there has been a huge amount of infrastructure which has gone in down there, namely the Cambridge Guided Bus. And with all these new homes, new residents, this is an opportunity for a project of considerable worth, and it's going to add a lot to that area. So you'll have seen through the last sort of 6 months, we have expanded the brief really of this project and the description of it from something that was described by Cambridge Horizons back in 2008 as a community stadium. We've expanded that because we think there's the possibility of something much more exciting, something much more significant for Cambridge. And it really goes back to that early vision that we talked about the 3 or 4 stakeholder meetings ago, of why can't Cambridge have something like a Loughborough? Why can't there be sports? Why can't there be education? Why can't there be health? Why can't there be a really special project somewhere in Cambridge which delivers all these things? And so we've started to call the project the Cambridge Sporting Village, and started to talk to people who might be interested in that. And now what we're going to talk through are a series of slides which they're in plan form. There's not great visuals of a gleaming stadium. We're not at that stage yet. But these are slides of plans of what this project will comprise of. And in essence, in terms of a sporting village, we're looking at the new community stadium, which is a facility which the region recognises it needs in a number of studies which the authorities have undertaken. A new multifunctional civics square, some space which has meaning within the project. There'll be approximately 16 acres of outdoor pitches. There's some new residential land which complements the residential land which is being developed on now at Trumpington Meadows, and a new extension of 21 acres to the already set out. We've got 150 acres of country park down in Trumpington. So in total that'll be 170 odd acres of country park down there. So it's quite a substantial proposition that we're putting together, and I think it's being Trumpington, and I think in the next couple of weeks we'll be announcing the topping out of the first residential home down in Trumpington, which is the first home on the southern fringe. I think there's not really a better place for it to be sited. So we're going to go through some slides now, looking at some of the plans, and I'll hand over to Chris and Richard to talk in a little bit more detail about what we've got on the plans as drawn. I'll start with that one, if you want, just to introduce the overall site. Colin, have you got a laser with you today? what is in his bag. While he's finding his laser, you can see on the slide. You can see there. You can see the black square, which is the location of the new community stadium. Rising up through the centre of or the centre right of the scheme is the Hawkston Road, and the M11 is down on the bottom. So M11, Hawkston Road, the new, sorry, not the new, the Park and Ride here. In terms of the new layout for Trumpington Meadows, the scheme that we have consented, that is the line of the consented scheme. So everything here has already got planning permission. Here's the new Allen Brooks Access Road, which I'm sure the majority of you have seen or been on. And here's the new Glebe Farm rising up to Allen Brooks. So this is the area that we've sketched out as the new site for the Cambridge Sporting Village. That's the new country park, an extension there. These are the new pitches. Here is new housing, and here is the new community stadium. So I'll pass over to Richard and Chris, who wants to start with that, and we'll go through these slides, telling you in a little bit more detail what these mean.
Thanks, Ed. So, if we start with the stadium and an 8,000 capacity, predominantly evenly spread around the four sides of the ground. The west stand.
Is the microphone working at the back?
Yeah. Sorry. The west stand, which is this one here on the left-hand side, will be the main stand for the football club, where all of the hospitality and VIP areas can be located. The south and the east stands will literally be the spectator areas, concourses, bars, and access into the stands. And then the north at the top there, which then will also have other accommodation, and we're looking at space there for Anglia Ruskin University and some of the sports development plans that they've got in hand, as well as a commercial gym and some other sports rehabilitation use as well. So really a real active area in the north and west around that community square that Ed referred you to earlier. Just to the south here is the indoor hall, which is a really important part for the Youth and Community Trust. So currently Jez is having to borrow, beg and scrape different facilities around the city for the Youth and Community Trust to use, and so having a hall with an indoor 3G pitch as part of the whole sporting village will be massively important for the Youth and Community Trust. Next slide. Just in terms of the next layer up, this is obviously taking up a further level of accommodation, and that's really centred around the west and the north stands, as I said there, in terms of the club facilities that can also then be used on a non-match day for hiring out for conferencing, weddings, and other such use. South of the stadium, you can just see the top of it. This is where the rest of the sports pitches are that make up the sports village. So there's a combination here of hockey, a rugby and football pitch, and then small-sided football, which we're talking about with CAMS FA in terms of running programs again for youth development, as well as a commercial five-a-side operation there as well. So that's it in terms of facility mix. Summarised there really in the sense of what I've taken you through. So the 8,000 capacity, all the facilities in the stadium, and then on the right hand side the other components that will also make up the stadium. And Chris is just going to talk to you now about some of the partners that we're working with to actually make that a reality.
So just to elaborate in terms of football stadium itself, and the question we often get asked about who else are we talking to, is it just going to be Cambridge United? We've always given a fairly consistent message. In an ideal world, we would like 2 occupiers of the actual stadium for the pitch. We do not want 3, that will destroy the pitch in terms of the playing surface, but clearly for a proper community stadium, to have 2 playing teams would be great. Cambridge United are always going to be the sort of core occupier of that. But in the last, or since Christmas really, our conversations with Cambridge Rugby Club and Cambridge City Football Club have both moved on a bit. Both of them have come out in the last 2 weeks publicly, I think the websites and also in the Cambridge Evening News, saying that they are now much more interested in this opportunity. We're going through a process at the moment of looking through business plans with the football club as a core occupier clearly, but with these other potential occupiers who could bring something else to the project. In terms of, I should say also we've tried to have a conversation and meeting with Histon Football Club, but I think that's completely off the agenda. In terms of other sports clubs, we've brought hockey into the mix as a sort of complementary sport. We're going to have the facilities and sort of a 3G pitch for them. So we're trying to open a dialogue with 2 or 3 Cambridge-based hockey clubs for whom this could be a home ground. In terms of non-sporting occupiers, Ed touched on this drive for education, particularly youth education. We've got a really good ongoing, we've had about 5 or 6 meetings with Anglia Ruskin University. They are very interested in relocating their sports science faculty to this site. They currently run degree courses for about 250 students, and they would like to move lock, stock and barrel their facility from East Road at the moment, which is a great course, has great courses, has great equipment but dreadful facilities, into a state-of-the-art modern facility on this site. One of the other main occupiers we're talking to now is a company called Core Cambridge, whom some of you may know. They're located up near the Science Park. They run a sports rehabilitation clinic, so that's for elite sportsmen coming back from serious injury through to normal customers who are recovering from injuries, car crashes, etc. And it's all about core fitness and core sports. They also have a big, strong tie with a number of the sports clubs in Cambridge. Cambridge RFA, Richard touched on their interest, and I think we're fair to say we're pretty well advanced to them, about running the small-sided soccer facility, but also housing some office functions, administration functions within the football club. The Youth and Community Trust, well, this will be their home. This will be their both administrative home in terms of their office space, but also the main home for them in terms of playing facilities, which will clearly have a massive wide-reaching potential for the local community. And the one which we haven't quite touched on here, but this is a fairly fresh conversation as of the last 6 weeks, but we are talking to the British Judo Association about locating their UK HQ at this facility. This essentially is on 2 strands. One, it's the home of the British judo team, so they will live on site, they will train on site, training for Olympics, training for World Championships. Secondly, it's opening up judo to the Cambridge population and really getting judo as a message into local schools. So that's we think has massive complementary benefits because it's elite sports but also driving and attracting community participation in this event.
Ryan, do you want to take us through the transport?
You're right with this lead coming down here?
Yeah, we're okay.
If you don't mind, I'll stand up. I'll stand up when I'm talking to you. My name's Ryan Plum. I'm the director of a company called WSP, and I sort of brought in to deal with the transport side of things. And whatever you're dealing with, whatever type of development it is, inevitably there's a transport effect to that, and people are affected by transport because we all drive cars and we all sit in traffic jams. So this is a key issue from everybody's point of view. I think it's important also to recognise that whilst we're very much focusing on the stadium and the use of the stadium tonight, we also talked about the sporting village. But there's 3 elements to this, as I see. There's a residential component to this development, which we have to make sure it works from a traffic and transportation point of view. People getting to and from that residential area, people coming to the sporting village on a daily basis using the 5-side soccer pitches, all of those sort of facilities. And then obviously, crucially, from the stadium's point of view, how we manage those people in and out of the stadium, you in and out of the stadium, how do you get there, where do you park your car, and how do you travel to and from the stadium. So they're the sort of 3 main components that we need to consider, and we need to make sure it works, not just on every day, every morning peak hour and every evening peak hour, but on stadium on match days, weekday match days and evening match days. So I think, just to understand they're the sort of main sort of areas that, from my point of view, that I'm looking at. To help me in all of that, I think many of you have probably participated in a survey, a study. There's two sort of sets of information that we've gained One of them was a sort of a questionnaire, as I understand it, was filled out by everybody, and members of the club filled out, tell us where you live or how you travel to and from the stadium. So we gained information from that point of view, and we've also been provided with the postcode information for the club members, so the members of the club and supporters of the club. So we got background information from that. And that's quite interesting to look at, because what that said is two sets of data here which have sort of provided that information to us, and that probably something in the order of 75% of the membership of the club lives more than 5 miles from the ground. So from this current location. So people are obviously travelling, over 5 miles, 5, 10, and beyond 10 miles to get to this location. Conversely, there's probably only 25% that live within 5 miles of the ground who would walk or cycle to get to the ground. So that's sort of a bit of background information. Now that probably doesn't translate to the full membership or the full supporters that arrive at a ground on a tomorrow night or at a weekend, because you probably draw the non-membership supporters from the more local community. But we certainly gained that information, and of that information it's also shown us that there's probably a predominance of people that are travelling in from the north of Cambridge, so that the membership is coming and living around areas outside Cambridge, but predominantly to the north of Cambridge, and obviously travelling back into Cambridge itself. From some further studies that we're undertaking at the moment, and they may be carrying on tomorrow night, I'm not quite sure, but we're doing some surveys of the roads around here to see what happens in terms of parking on match days and on the days when there's not a match on. Because obviously on the residential areas around here, there's a lot of people parking to use that as a parking facility to gain access to the ground. So just getting an understanding of it, certainly how everyone operates, how everyone gets here, and how everyone travels, and how everyone might travel in the future. One of the bits of information we've got is that on average, you're getting about 2.5 people per car. So it's not people aren't coming on their own by car necessarily. People are car sharing, and the potential is for greater car sharing to come to the ground. So that's sort of the background information that we look at, to look at what is the effect of this change in location, and how will people travel there in the future. Can we go on to the... So I hope you can sort of see this. Is you've got the M11 over here on this side. Work out how to use this. Yeah? Let's set my eyes up. So we've got the M11 over here, the railway lines travelling through. This is the location. So this is the busway coming in here. You've got park and ride services through here. So this location is well served by public transport. It's a location that has good public transport connections to it. So therefore, the opportunity exists to encourage people to travel here by public transport. But by having the park and ride location here, you equally have a car park available to you to use, but that's not going to happen at weekends. But certainly for a weekday events, the opportunities does exist for some parking to be made available through the park and ride facilities. So that's there's this balance between trying to encourage people to use public transport for walking and cycling to the ground. There'll be provision for cycle parking locations on the ground as well. But equally, we've got to recognise that people do drive. I think the surveys that we have show something like 65% of people travel to the ground currently by car. So we have to recognise that, and we have to make provision for that purpose. The idea is not to provide parking on the site in the main. There's some parking available from the slides you saw earlier. There will be parking there for the use of the five-side sport pitches, the sporting village, and some limited parking for the ground itself, but it's not to accommodate the main supporters' car parking on the ground itself. We go on to the next slide. This gives you an indication of that's about 2 miles from the ground here. So we recognise that people will park remote from the ground and walk in. People may get the bus in from those more remote locations. So we're looking at opportunities where people can actually be parking the park and ride site and walk into the ground, or slightly further locations, some of the schools and the colleges around the area where there may be provision for parking. Bidwells is a location which is in the centre of Trumpington, which has some element of parking available to it, and people will maybe be able to park there and walk to the ground from there. So commonly what you see at other grounds is where there's some remote parking available, it's identified and advertised in that way, and we make use of that on a Saturday game, and then people walk from those locations. The potential is to walk along the busway. That is a route that is available for people to walk, and it'll be a good corridor of movement for people walking to the ground. So there's a combination of many measures where we've got parking close to the ground, parking slightly more remote from the ground, bus access to the ground, pedestrians and cycling access to the ground, and we're also looking at the bigger games, the potential for bigger games. This is an 8,000 seater stadium. I appreciate that's not what you're getting at the moment in terms of numbers coming to this ground, but the potential exists there to grow the crowd here and how we deal with that. And we're looking at hopper bus services, which would come in from slightly more remote locations, where we would bring people into the ground and drop them off adjacent to the ground to allow for those bigger games. In the main, on the normal games that you're operating at the moment, we will have provision for parking generally within the 2-mile radius of the site. But looking at the bigger picture, the opportunity exists for parking more remote from that and using hopper bus services. So that's a bit of the background that we're looking at the moment, and hopefully if I can answer any questions, I'm happy to do so later on.
Excuse me.
Yeah, sorry, I should just say one other point, that obviously we recognise that obviously one of the things that we're looking at is the parking on street that occurs around this ground at the moment. One of the things that we're looking at in terms of around the proposed ground location, the fact that we would be looking at ensuring there's a parking management strategy to ensure that people weren't parking in the residential areas around the new ground location. So that you have controlled parking zones around that to prevent on-street parking in those locations.
I've just got one quick question.
Can we do questions at the end?
Well, all I was
Go on,
going to say was, go and have a look at Northampton's ground.
Yeah.
Because they've got a very big field there.
Right, good evening. Planning update, that slide doesn't have any words on it, that doesn't mean we haven't been doing a lot. And indeed, as you've probably seen in the local media, there's been quite a lot going on. Obviously, Brian's been doing a lot of work on transport. We've got various other technical pieces of work underway, looking at issues such as lighting, ecology, utility provision on site, so that's all going on in the background. What we have done is we've held quite a number of meetings with local residents groups and various other stakeholders to talk about the concept and also to see what other uses that people might think could be accommodated in the sporting village. Quite a few of those have been reported in the local media. I think it's fair to say that there have been a number of comments about the stadium being located there, but I think at every single meeting people have expressed support for the concept and it's a great idea. The issue has been about whether that's the right place for it to be located, particularly from some local residents groups, and their concerns are related to things such as will the infrastructure cope, how will we deal with traffic, the loss of greenbelt because it's in the Cambridge greenbelt, issues such as flood lighting. And those are all things we're looking at the moment and trying to work our way through. Brian's covered some of the ones on transport because that'd probably be, I think, the key issue that people have raised is how will people get in and out of the grounds. In terms of planning timescales, the site does lie in the greenbelt, as we've said a number of times over the last 18 to 24 months. Both Cambridge City and South Cambridgeshire District Council are reviewing their local plans at present. That's the document which defines this as greenbelt, and the boundary runs somewhere through the middle of the pitch on that layout. Both authorities are reviewing their plans. They will be publishing documents for consultation in June and July, and what they've said to us is that they will be raising the issue in those consultation documents about should there be a sports village community stadium, where might it be accommodated. So we'll be going back over some of the ground that we've been over the last 18 months, but I think that by necessity they need to do that because it's their plan. But what will be really important is that people respond to the consultation from the councils and express their views, and that they write in and make politicians aware and officers aware at the councils as to support for the scheme. So that will be coming out in around June and July. The timescales for those plans they're on different time tracks. But South Cambridgeshire intend to adopt their local plan around 2015, at the end of 2015. So if we then submit a planning application after that and have to build the stadium, you can see it's potentially quite some time off before these facilities, and we think they're fantastic facilities, could actually be delivered. So we are working and looking at how we might be able to accelerate that timetable and how we might be able to bring a planning application forward earlier than that. There are considerable risks in that because the land will remain in the green belt, and if we go through the local plan process, our objective would be to get the land removed from the green belt. But there's a presumption against some of this development because you can put sports pitches and so on, that's acceptable in the green belt. The stadium and the housing that goes with it would be contrary to policy. But we are working hard to see how we can shorten the planning timescales so that actually we can deliver something as soon as possible.
Governance, who wants to talk about that?
I'll briefly talk about this slide. We might share this between us actually on this one. This is a sort of detail on this is quite small, so you'll be able to see all the words on here. But this is just a slide getting up the first thoughts on governance on this. And we are undertaking quite a broad piece of work in terms of the whole viability of this project and how it will be managed in the long term. And clearly there are a lot of stakeholders who could potentially be involved in that management, and we've got to assess the risk of engaging with those who is really the right body to own and run this. That might be a local authority, it could be a community trust, it could be a range of different entities. But we're starting to get a sort of skeleton there, and we're seeing it now getting populated of the parties that are interested, what their role is going to be in terms of day-to-day management of the facility, and their day-to-day or ongoing, wider, more strategic management in that business. That's a sort of snapshot of our thoughts at the moment. We're working through, and I think in 6 months' time, at the next stakeholder meeting, we'll have some more details on this. We do like to draw from examples, and we've been very open about the example of a type of stadium in Spain that has interested us. There are examples of sporting villages in the UK. There aren't many, but there are, and we are talking to them. One in particular is Leeds Sports Village, and we're talking to that organisation about the structure and how they manage themselves. So my point in this is we're not trying to invent something completely new here. There are good examples of well-managed organisations and businesses that we can draw from. And this is one that in particular, this is a shared rugby league and football facility. It's also got education on site and a whole range of other facilities. It's a viable business up and running.
One of the things in terms of the ownership running model we're trying to get away from, as you'll know, is making sure that one body or one entity does not have control of this facility. Therefore, one body cannot pull the rug under everyone else's feet. This is supposed to be a completely joined up, collective strategy that everyone here, in terms of all the co-occupiers, have a sustainable business model which allows them to occupy this facility and focus on doing what they're really good at. We might not want the football club to be in charge of cleaning the facility. We might want to bring someone who's specialist at doing that. But the whole idea is that everyone's got a stake in this project and everyone shares collectively from the benefit of it being successful. And the other thing I just say about, in terms of the stadium and all the sports villages, the whole idea of every bit of space we build is that it's multifunctional and it works really, really hard, and it's generating as much revenue into the central pot as it possibly can. What we don't want is a facility that's used every Saturday, 14, 15 times a year on a home game on a Saturday only. We want a bit of space which 7 days a week can be used in the evenings for education, can be used by the football club on Saturday afternoons, can be used by the rugby club for entertainment, and therefore we're continually generating revenue into the pot that can be shared between everybody, and therefore everyone can have a sustainable business plan which allows them to grow as a club.
Thanks, Chris. So we're drawing to a close here on our part of this, which is, and I'm just going to highlight the next steps that the project has in front of us. We've done a lot of work articulating what we think this project is, what it stands for, and where it can go. There are issues around that though, and those are principally planning. And that's the first thing we need to do is in the course of the next month hold a high-level meeting with the authorities and agree the planning strategy to go forward. That's something we want to get some clarity on. We've identified this evening a lot of parties, a lot of bodies that have expressed a strong interest to come in and be part of this project. Over the course of the next months, we need to sign those up and turn a wish into a reality to bring those names together. And we think that it's a really exciting list. It defines the vision that we set out at the very beginning of this project, and we're delighted it has come together so strongly. On this site, we will be looking at holding public consultation for what is planned for this site. Clearly, once the football club has relocated, this site becomes available for us to develop, raise funds to finance this entire project. We've been very open on that, and our preferences for probably residential development on this site. In the next month or so, we will be holding a local consultation on getting local views on what people would like to see coming onto this site. And then, subject to point number one and agreeing how we go forward, we would like to be working up our applications for both this site, but more particularly the Cambridge Sporting Village, so that we can submit that sometime later this year, early next year, for the authorities to consider and grant consent. What we need, though, is support. We've done a lot of local consultation in Trumpington, and we've been and in the neighbouring parishes, and we've had a very clear bit of feedback from them on their thoughts on our proposals and the issues they'd like us to consider. As a regional project, this was set out some time ago as a strategic requirement for major sporting facilities and for a community stadium. So we know from a regional point of view, a high-level point of view, there is a need for it. But now, really, we want to give the voice to the region, to locally, here, to Trumpington, to wherever, and see how much do people really want this facility. So that's now the focus of our attention for the next couple of months, is to give people the opportunity to comment to us and say, yay or nay, we like the idea of these plans or not. There is we've got a website which is already up and running, and there's an opportunity to go onto that. I think the next slide, that's an image, actually a screenshot of the website, and there's a link down on that in that blue section there. You probably not that clear from there, but there's an info at cambridgecommunitystadium.org, a link which people can link to and make their comments. And we will be pushing this out much more widely to people to make it available. We'll probably put a more simple voting system on there that people can just come on and click and vote, so that we can start to build up an understanding of the level of support. That's all we were going to say to you in terms of a formal presentation. So maybe if we can have the lights up and we can have some questions. Thanks for bearing with us and being patient at that time.